Seoul in 2015, a city of bright lights and people busy with modern life. Among them, Kim Sanghun, an ambitious young businessman, is preparing for a big turning point in his life, a perfect wedding with Leon, the woman he loves dearly. However, behind Sanghun's successful and happy appearance is a dark secret related to his complicated relationship with his twin brother Kim Sangun. Sangun and Sangun grew up in a rich and powerful family, but they never stopped there. The two brothers always competed fiercely and relied on each other, with a special bond that no one could understand. But now Sanghun wants to escape that vicious cycle to start a normal life with Leon. He sees in her the happiness and freedom that he has longed for. On the contrary, Sangun cannot accept his younger brother leaving. In Sangjun's eyes, Sangun is not only his twin brother but also an irreplaceable part of his life. The appearance of Lee Yoon is like a knife cutting off the strong bond they once had. Sangjun gradually becomes obsessed, jealous, and afraid of losing the person he thought was the only one who understood him in this world. To Lee Yoon, she did not know anything about the strange relationship between the two brothers. In her eyes, Sanghun was the perfect man, and their future seemed to be full of promise. However, she did not expect that she was gradually drawn into an invisible but dangerous struggle between the two men who seemed to be the closest in the world. Secrets are hidden in the dark, and behind Sangun's smile, behind Sangjun's cold eyes, is a silent battle whose outcome could cost everyone. Leon sat in her usual coffee shop, a hot latte on the table, and thoughts of the future flooded her mind. Her wedding with Sangun was approaching, but a feeling of unease gradually appeared. Whenever she asked about Sangun's family, especially his twin brother Kim Sangun, he would avoid mentioning it, not wanting to mention it. This made Lee Yoon wonder if there was something he was hiding. In another apartment, Kim Sangjun sat silently, his mind haunted by the image of his younger brother and Leon Sangun's growing distance, and spending more time with Lee Yoon fueled jealousy and obsession in Sangjun. He began to secretly follow their every move, from dates to intimate moments. A feeling of betrayal grew in his heart. Sangjun could not accept losing the special relationship between the two brothers. Sleepless nights, negative thoughts about how to keep Sangun by his side increasingly occupied his mind. Sangun, despite preparing for the wedding and being busy with work, could not help but feel guilty whenever he thought of Sangjun. He knew that his twin brother would not easily accept his marriage and leave their complicated relationship. But Sangun had decided he had to move forward. Lee Yoon was the future, the freedom he longed for. However, deep down, Sangun knew that getting rid of Sangjun would not be easy. The instability in Sangjun's eyes became more and more obvious, and that made Sangun uneasy. Would this wedding really help him escape the darkness of the past? A few days later, Sangjun stood in the dark corner of a fancy restaurant, staring through the large glass at Sangun and Leon's table. The two of them sat there laughing and talking happily, completely unaware of his presence. The sight before his eyes made his heart burn with fire. Sangjun had never felt so isolated and abandoned like this before. He watched the way Sangun took care of Leon, the way his hand gently touched hers, his eyes filled with love. A feeling of jealousy welled up in Sangjun's heart, strong and uncontrollable. He felt like there was an invisible string tightening around his neck, forcing him to do something. Everything in Sangjun's life was gradually losing its meaning because Sangun was no longer by his side. The only thing he could think of was how to get his brother back. After that evening, Sangun and Lee Yoon left the restaurant, walking along the streets that were sparkling with lights. They talked about wedding plans, future plans, and Lee Yoon still couldn't help but feel the sweetness from Sangun. However, deep down, she still felt that something was wrong. "Did you ever think that Sangun would come to our wedding?" Lee Yoon suddenly asked, her voice gentle but straightforward. Sangun was silent for a moment. He didn't want to lie to her, but he couldn't tell her the whole truth either. "I think Sangjun needs time. Maybe he won't be comfortable with this." Lee Yoon looked at him with a questioning gaze but didn't ask further. She had already made a decision in her heart. She had to meet Sangjun, find out the truth from him. She couldn't continue living in this ambiguity forever. A week later, Lee Yoon decided to put her plan into action. She called and arranged a meeting with Sangjun at a quiet coffee shop. She didn't say anything to Sangun, wanting to find out for herself about the brother he had been avoiding. When Sangjun entered the coffee shop, Lee Yoon sensed a heavy atmosphere surrounding him. His eyes were cold, but there was something fragile hidden beneath his hard exterior. She smiled gently, inviting him to sit. "Sangjun, I think we should talk," Lee Yoon began, trying to keep her tone as casual as possible. "I feel a distance between you and Sangun, and I want to understand better." Sangjun stared at her, his eyes filled with suspicion. He didn't trust Lee Yoon, who had taken away everything that mattered most to him. However, he couldn't contain the outburst inside. "You don't understand," Sangun said, his voice low and full of emotion. "Sangun and I are not just brothers. We have a bond that you can never replace." Sangjun's words left Lee Yoon feeling confused and bewildered. The relationship between the two brothers was much more complicated than she had imagined. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice filled with doubt. Sangjun leaned forward, his eyes dark and fiery. "You will never have him completely." "Sangun." His mind. Lee Yoon sat motionless, a chill running down her spine. Sangjun's words made her feel scared. She understood that she was dealing with someone who was no longer rational, and she began to realize that the relationship between Sanghun and Sangjun had gone much further than she had imagined. After the meeting, Lee Yoon returned home in a state of confusion. She didn't know what to do next. She loved Sanghun, but Sangjun's obsession with him made her worried. This relationship was not just a simple family bond. It seemed to have become a psychological battle with no way out. Meanwhile, Sangun returned to his apartment filled with turmoil. He felt more and more out of control, and his obsession with Sangun grew. He knew that he couldn't let Lee Yoon take his brother away from him forever. Sangjun began to formulate a plan to keep Sanghun by his side no matter the cost. After meeting Sangjun, Lee Yoon couldn't get the words Sanghun his mind out of her head. She began to notice a change in Sanghun's attitude when it came to his brother. Behind his gentle appearance, there was something hidden. She felt like she was stepping into a story that she didn't fully understand. Lee Yoon tried to talk to Sanghun directly many times, but his sad eyes and forced smile made her hesitate. Sanghun didn't want to mention this, but Lee Yoon knew she couldn't avoid it forever. Meanwhile, Sangjun was sinking deeper and deeper into obsession and jealousy. After the meeting, he felt threatened by Lee Yoon. She was gradually taking everything he loved, and Sangun couldn't bear to lose Sanghun. In his eyes, Lee Yoon was an enemy that needed to be eliminated. That night, Sangun couldn't sleep. Sitting in the dark thoughts surrounded him. Sangjun knew that if he didn't take action, Sanghun would leave forever. His decision was made. He had to act. He had to keep Sanghun at all costs. The next morning, Lee Yoon received a text message from Sanghun. "We need to talk. See you this afternoon." The text message made her worried. That afternoon, Lee Yoon went to Sanghun's house in an uneasy mood. Sanghun sat on the chair, head bowed, his expression heavy. "Lee Yoon," Sanghun said, his voice quiet. "I need to tell you the truth." Lee Yoon was silent, waiting. She knew this moment would come but didn't expect it to come so soon. "Sangjun and I aren't just brothers," Sanghun sighed. "Since we were young, we had a bond that no one else could understand. But now I know it's not healthy anymore." Lee Yoon was stunned, not believing what she had just heard. Their relationship was more complicated than she thought. "What do you want?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You want to get out of that relationship and have a normal life with me. But Sangun won't leave you alone," Sangun replied, his eyes filled with fatigue. This fact made Lee Yoon afraid. Sangjun was not only jealous but also deeply haunted. She clearly felt the real threat that both of them were facing. That night, Lee Yoon could not sleep. The conversation with Sangun kept haunting her, and now she felt the danger coming from Sangun more clearly than ever. A storm is brewing, and neither Lee Yoon nor Sangun could have imagined that the future ahead would drag them into a dangerous vortex. Sangjun takes action. After deciding not to let anyone steal Sanghun, he secretly watches his brother and Lee Yoon's every move. All their wedding plans are in his sights. His obsession and jealousy grow, urging Sangjun to control everything. One night, Sangjun sneaks into Sanghun's apartment. Not intending to cause harm, he just wants to look back at the life he was a part of. But when he sees their wedding photo, his jealousy flares up. Although he refrains from destroying it, his eyes are cold as he leaves, telling himself she won't have him the next day. Sanghun notices a few things in the apartment that have been disturbed. When he sees the wedding photo out of place, he knows there is only one person who could do this, Sangun. He can't stay silent anymore. Sangjun has gone too far, and Sanghun decides to confront him before the situation gets worse. That afternoon at a coffee shop, Sanghun and Lee Yoon met. Lee Yoon looked at him worriedly. "Things are getting out of control," she said. "Are you sure we'll be okay?" Sanghun sighed. "I tried not to worry you, but I can't hide forever. Sangjun is losing control. If we don't stop him, things will get worse, so what should we do?" "I'll talk to Sangjun. I need to convince him to accept that we have to live our separate lives." That night, Sangjun received a call from Sanghun. "Meet me at your house tonight. We need to talk." Sangjun knew the confrontation was coming. When Sangjun entered the apartment, the atmosphere was tense. Sanghun said sternly, "This can't go on. You need to accept that I have my own life. I love Lee Yoon and we're getting married." Sangjun smiled faintly and walked over. "She changed you. I can't let her take you away from me." your mind. Sanghun felt a chill run down his spine. Sangjun's words weren't just jealousy, they were obsession, a madness. The conversation was going nowhere. Sangjun left the apartment with a simmering rage, and Sanghun knew it wouldn't be easy. Darkness was closing in, and he wasn't sure if he could save everything before it was too late. After the confrontation, Sanghun couldn't stop worrying about Sangun. He knew his brother had gone too far, and the obsession wasn't just jealousy. Darkness was enveloping Sangjun's mind, and Sangun felt everything was getting out of control. Leon also felt the tension enveloping her. She tried not to worry Sangun anymore, but she herself felt uneasy. Every time she called, every time she went out, she was on guard. Sangjun's figure was always present, even though he didn't appear directly. A week later, Lee Yoon and Sanghun decided to go to a seaside resort to relax and temporarily escape the tension. They hoped that the time apart would make Sangjun calm down. The first peaceful days helped both of them feel relieved, making them think they had overcome all worries. But on the third night, everything suddenly changed. That night, Lee Yoon woke up and received a text message from an unknown number. "I know where you are." Her spine went cold. Lee Yoon looked at the phone screen without daring to respond, because she knew that only Sangun could have sent that message. She sat quietly in her room looking out the window. Although her surroundings were still quiet, her mind was not. The next morning, Lee Yoon decided to hide this from Sanghun. She didn't want to add to the tension. Although she reassured herself that it was probably just a small threat, her anxiety continued to grow. Somewhere not far away, Sangun quietly watched. He realized that this trip was a sign that Sanghun was leaving forever. He couldn't accept that. Dark thoughts about how to get rid of Lee Yoon grew stronger in his mind. She had to leave, no matter what. On the last afternoon at the resort, Sanghun received a call from Sangun. Sangjun's voice rang out coldly. "Do you think you can hide forever, Sanghun? You can't escape this bond." Sanghun remained calm. "The bond between us has changed. You have your own life, and I have to accept that." Sangjun's voice became colder. "No one can replace me in your life. She can't have you. You belong to me." Before Sanghun could reply, the call was disconnected. Holding the phone tightly, Sanghun understood that Sangjun had reached his limit, and if he didn't act soon, things would get out of control. That night, Lee Yoon and Sanghun packed their bags and left the resort in silence. Both felt Sangjun's threatening presence, which made them decide to return to Seoul earlier than planned. They knew in their hearts that this was just the beginning of what was to come. Returning to Seoul, both Sanghun and Lee Yoon couldn't deny that the fear of Sangun had invaded their lives. Even though they tried to continue working and preparing for the wedding, the tense atmosphere still prevailed. Lee Yoon always felt like she was being followed, and Sanghun gradually lost his composure. One morning on her way to work, Lee Yoon discovered a strange car following her. She tried to turn into different streets, but the car kept following her. Her heart pounded, fear rising. She pulled into a cafe, but when she looked back through the window, the car was gone. Although she felt safe again, Lee Yoon couldn't shake the fear that Sangjun was still following her. Sangun also felt the pressure growing heavier. He knew that Sangjun wouldn't give up easily and had crossed the line. If he continued to keep quiet, the situation could get worse. One afternoon, he decided to go to Sangun's apartment without notice. As he stood at the door, his hands were shaking. He didn't know if he was facing the person he loved or the one he was obsessed with. Sangun knocked, and after a few seconds, Sangjun appeared with a haggard face. "What are you doing here?" Sangjun's voice was hoarse, both surprised and indifferent. "We need to talk," Sangun replied. Inside the dark apartment, the curtains were drawn, reflecting Sangjun's breakdown. "I can't go on like this," Sangun said. "You have your own life." "Lee Yoon is not my enemy," Sangun laughed coldly. "You've changed. She made you into someone else," Sangun replied firmly. "It's me who's changed. Our bond is destroying us both. I have to let go." Sangjun stepped forward, his eyes flashing with madness. "I'll never let go. As long as she's here, I'll pull you back." Sanghun saw the madness in his brother's eyes. Words can't change anything anymore. After leaving the apartment, Sanghun immediately called Lee Yoon. "You need to be with me more," he said. Sangjun won't stop. Lee Yoon understood and agreed, but in her heart, she couldn't stop worrying. That night, when they got home, the door was broken into. Everything was in disarray. Their wedding photo was smashed. Sanghun knew that this was Sangjun's doing. This time he couldn't let it go. Lee Yoon held Sanghun's hand tightly. Both of them understood that this was no longer a psychological threat but a real war. After discovering the apartment was vandalized, Sanghun and Lee Yoon knew that Sangun had turned to action. The threat was no longer psychological but real, and they had to deal with it before it was too late. Sangun decided to call the police, although his heart ached to have to bring his brother to justice. The police promised to investigate and closely monitor Sangjun. Even though the police intervened, Lee Yon still felt uneasy. She often felt like someone was following her, avoiding crowded places and always being on guard. The feeling of being stalked by Sangjun never left her mind. For Sangjun, the presence of the police made him even more frantic. He believed that Sanghun had completely betrayed him. In his twisted mind, Lee Yon was the cause of everything and she had to be eliminated. A few days later, when Lee Yon was home alone, the doorbell rang. She felt scared and decided not to open the door. Soon after, a message appeared on the phone. "Do you think you can hide forever?" Lee Yon immediately called the police, but when they arrived, Sangun had disappeared. This mysterious appearance made Lee Yon feel that danger was getting closer than ever. Sangun realized that the situation was getting worse and decided to take refuge with Lee Yon at a friend's house. Even though they had moved to a safer place, Sangun was still worried. He knew that Sangjun would not stop, and that the upcoming confrontation was inevitable. That night, Sanghun and Lee Yon sat together in the temporary shelter. Tension was all around. Neither of them said much, but both understood that the peace was only temporary. Sanghun held Lee Yon's hand, but his heart was filled with anxiety. He knew that he had to face Sangjun one last time before things got out of hand. "What do you think we should do?" Lee Yon asked, her voice trembling. Sanghun replied, "You have to face him, settle it once and for all. Otherwise, things will only get worse." Lee Yon was worried, but she understood Sanghun's determination. She knew that this confrontation was inevitable, and that it could lead to danger for both of them. In the end, Sanghun decided to meet Sangun one last time to end things. He knew that this confrontation would be dangerous and could have unpredictable consequences. But he also understood that he couldn't run away forever, and that this was the only way to protect the person he loved. Sanghun knew that avoiding was not the solution. He had to face Sangjun to protect Lee Yon and himself. That morning he called Sangun. "I need to see you. This is the last time." After a moment of silence, Sangjun replied, "Okay, meet at the old place." The old place was the park the two brothers often went to when they were young, full of memories. But now it would be the place that decided their fate. When Sanghun arrived, the park was unusually quiet. The sky was gloomy, the air was heavy. Sangjun stood there, his eyes cold and filled with anger. "But do you think you can abandon me?" Sangjun said, his voice sharp. "Do you think I will let you live happily with her?" Sangun approached, his voice calm. "I don't understand. You didn't abandon me. You just wanted to have your own life. The connection between us is no longer healthy. You have to accept that." Sangjun smiled faintly, his eyes sharp. "No, she changed you, turned you into someone else. I will never let go." The conversation quickly became tense. Sangjun, in a fit of rage, rushed to attack Sanghun. "I can't lose you," he shouted. Sanghun tried to stay calm, but unexpectedly Sangjun lost control completely. The struggle became more intense as Sangjun became more and more aggressive. At that moment, Lee Yon appeared. She couldn't sit still and watch from afar. Seeing the two brothers fighting, she shouted loudly, "Sangjun, stop!" Her screams only made the situation worse. Sangjun turned and rushed towards her, his eyes filled with resentment. "You ruined everything," he shouted. Sanghun, despite being at a disadvantage, tried to stand up to stop his brother. But at that moment, the police appeared in time. They had been monitoring the situation after receiving a report from Lee Yon. Sangjun was restrained, but he still screamed in a frenzy. "She took you. You're mine," he screamed as the police took him away. Sangun stood still, watching his brother being taken away, his heart aching. Even though the confrontation was over, he knew he had lost Sangjun forever. That night, Sangun and Lee Yon sat silently together. Finally, the threat was over, but the price was too great. Sangun had lost the brother he once loved, but he knew there was no other way. After that incident, Sangun and Lee Yon's lives gradually returned to normal. They decided to start over, away from the darkness of the past. Sangun tried to balance the painful memories of his brother and his new life. Even though the wound in his heart had not yet healed, he realized that he needed to move forward. Lee Yon also overcame her fear. She and Sangun got married in a small, unpretentious ceremony, simple and modest. Although the past still lingers in their minds, they choose to live in the present, believing that the future will be brighter. Both learn to face the pain and build a new life together. The hardships they have gone through make them stronger, and that helps them appreciate the precious things they have. The end of this story is also the beginning of a new future, with faith in love and the power of resilience.